Hey Jordan. Hey Frank, the bald guy. Just getting back into it. Just been looking into this Mixolydian pentatonic stuff. Trying to find some new ideas. Hey Josh, well yeah, but that's good because that's when you move each shape up like this, you need to relate to the shape within itself, because a lot of times when we do everything in one key, let's say you do this, let's say you work on the scale always in A major, for example, then you always relate this shape not just to what it looks like, but also you can't see it here, but where the dots are, and that's why it feels weird. And both ways are good, but you should be comfortable with both ways of doing it. Otherwise, you will always feel awkward when you're like in between the dots or whatever. So. No, it's Mixolydian. But these major triads, one whole step apart, is also what you can do in Lydian. So if I did this in, let's see, if you hear D as the root note here, that's right. Then it will sound like Lydian. But I'm thinking E here. So. I'm just fucking around with some ideas here, mainly going between those. Those arpeggios, a whole set apart. But the good thing there, if I find something cool here, this will also work in Lydian. They'll sound different. Problem with this, if you don't play the full Mixolydian scale, and you remove the second and the sixth, you kind of get this, you get this scale, which I called Mixolydian pentatonic, but that's just a term for it. There's different names that I've seen. Some call it the John Hammer scale, the dude who came up with the Miami Vice theme, and yeah, but he would use this a lot in his playing. It just basically it's almost like a 7th chord arpeggio with the 4th added or the 11th added. And this half step sounds really cool. But the problem with it is that if I do normal pentatonic, you know, 3 notes per string, that's fine. But when I have to do this one, some dicey fingerings here. But it sounds cool, so it's worth working on. So I kind of don't like the sixth here, so sounds good in certain, you know, instances, but it's not a strong note, I think, in this scale. So. Hey, Ryan Chris. Well, actually, you kind of do. Not necessarily by listening to me, but listening to music is so important, and that's actually something that I've realized myself several times, because I get into like, yeah, I gotta practice, I get into too much things, like practice and practice and practice, and that helps obviously a lot. But if you don't have the sound in your ear, what you're going for, it's gonna take you so much longer to get there, even if you do everything correctly. So I think it's super important to have that, whatever technique you're working on, or whatever, anything you're working on musically, but even technique stuff, right? Because if you don't have a good representation in your head, what, you know, clean, fast picking should sound like, how will you know if you got it or not, right? Because I've seen a lot of people who think like, well, yeah, Kerry King, he picks really fast, like, yeah, but it's and I'm not shitting on Slayer, it's not my music, but I'm just saying that that's not clean picking, right? And maybe you want that effect, and then you don't need to practice as much. But if you don't have a good representation in your head what clean, fast picking sounds like, how are you gonna know when you got it? So listening is super important, and that's also in the Practice Room Pro. When I have these deep dives now, we're on the second deep dive. So the first deep dive was alternate picking. I started a thread where I posted a ton of just fast picking runs in the context of music. So there was some Yngwie stuff and Gilbert stuff and all kinds of things that, you know, hopefully people haven't really heard before. And then people could put in their own stuff as well. And now for this month with sweep picking, I've done the same, because it's so important to one, you might not even know what's possible with this stuff. So your idea of sweeping might just be like, well, it's just, that's all you can do. You don't understand that. You don't want that. But you can do, you know, much bigger sweeps, and you can do it in more of a musical, you know, go through progressions and stuff. And that's so important for any technique. And when I say technique, I mean, you know, bends and vibrato and all that stuff as well. So it's not about playing fast necessarily, but I think it's important to know what the hell are you going for sound-wise. actually one cool thing about this one as well, what I call the Mixolydian pentatonic, since we removed the second note and the sixth, if we add in the second and the sixth again, but we add in the flat second and flat sixth, you get the Phrygian dominant. So if you're like in A minor, then go to the Fretboard and you go into an Yngwie. You can actually play this one, and you don't even need to hit. You don't even need to hit the flat second, even though that helps. But since that's going to be part of the backing. So you can get sort of like a hybrid Yngwie sound there. If you do the trias, then you need to do the D minor instead. So. Moral of that story is that even though you have all the notes, you don't need to play them all. You can still play some of the more important notes and imply the rest. So. This is also a great pinky buster, or whatever you want to call it. If you play this shape, these fingers, instead of doing it is. I mean, it's not. When you can do it, it's not tricky, but initially it's going to be very tricky, of course. But at least it sounds good. It sounds better than going, so. Actually, a thing that I like to do is to improvise. I do this because it's more choosing notes than improvising, because I'm not trying to make this amazing solo because of the limitation here. So just take these 3 octaves and then go very slowly, well, as slowly as I need to get everything right, and choose the notes in random fashion, because then I'm improving my technique, but I'm also not bored out of my mind. So try to find a tempo where you can't really hear the position shifts. So. I know it's not enough black metal, or actually how's the tone today? Added some more reverb and shit so it doesn't sound so dry. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Julian. Here's a sort of Petrucci, Steve Morse approach. I should probably say Steve Morse Petrucci approach, because I believe Petrucci, being a massive fanboy of Steve Moore's, as am I. He got it from him. So, you have the chromatic, you have the Mixolydian shape here. And you just add a chromatic passing tone. It's kind of cool effect. If you don't overdo it, which I of course do. And one thing to think about here is that when you have two whole steps, you have the option of doing the extra note here, which sounds like absolute crap, and then you can do it here, which sounds much better. So, no, that sounds wrong. Yes. No. Yes. It's a great way to work on 4 notes per string picking. Having to do just the chromatic stuff. You can actually do it in actual music. You know, that kind of thing that Petrucci did. Is that from Under a Glass Moon, I think. So I remember seeing that the first time, like, what the fuck's going on here? It's like, it wasn't chromatic, but it was chromatic, and I didn't get it, and it sounded good. But then a few years later, I learned that, oh, okay, just add passing notes, passing tones to the 3 note per string shapes to make them 4 notes per string. And then you play them really fast. So. I like to use the pentatonic as well. So. People hate that at a blues jam. The whirring sound from the flutes frees my brain. Yeah. This is a whirring flurry thing as well. Just start fast picking on that. Cool stuff. Hi, Panos. Well, it's like anything. When you start weightlifting, you might go from, I don't know, 60 kilos to 100 kilos in a year or two. But then as you get closer, as you get higher and higher up, your gains percentage-wise will go down. And I think it's the same thing with guitar playing. So I think once you reach, and I don't really give a shit about like, whoa, how fast can you play 16th notes? Who cares? It depends on what you're playing. If you're playing a chromatic thing, you can play it way faster than if you're playing something that's really has a lot of string changes or whatever. So I think that type of thinking is just weird to me. But just for argument's sake here, if you can do a chromatic thing at 200 BPMs and you got there in, I don't know, 3-4 years and you practice a lot, I don't think you will get to 400 BPMs in another 3 years. It will probably take you way longer. I mean, 400 BPMs, I haven't heard anyone play that fast cleanly. Maybe, actually, I take that back. Maybe what's the guy that everyone thinks he's faking it, but he's definitely not faking it. Scottish guy. well, I don't remember his name, but if it comes to me, I'm gonna tell you. But it sounds absolutely fake, but it's not, because I've seen him doing live streams and he does the same thing. So it's crazy. He's actually way faster than John Lane, and he has a really strange picking technique. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, I think it will. The better you get, the sort of improvement you'll see will slow down, but it doesn't mean that you can't get better. Also, I think a lot of people get to a certain speed and then they're like, oh cool, I can play this now, and they don't keep practicing that, because it does, you know, if you play something, right, if I do that and then I do it again, second time was faster by maybe 10 BPMs or something, I don't know. But it's such a small difference, so no one's really gonna hear it. So I think a lot of people stop improving speed-wise because they move on to other things because they're happy with the speed. But I think if you just keep grinding and you're trying to get faster and you just do technique, like no one can tell me, like if you just sit around and practice scale for 6 hours a day and you do it completely perfectly, you're gonna keep improving until the physical limitations kick in, right? So I think it's mainly a matter of people losing interest and start working on other things. So that's my guess. That depends, Orion. I mean, I developed a lot of technique in the first 3-4 years because that's all I did. I just practice. But I also developed a lot after that. So it's yeah, Roy Marchbank. Yeah, and he's I've heard from so many sources that know him that's absolutely not fake, and also I've seen live videos or like live streams where he sits with a friend of his and talking, like there's no faking there. So, but it sounds like, what the fuck? It really sounds like, yeah, it's weird. But he said he practiced. I think he said he used to have like a technique schedule that would take 6 hours to go through, and then it would do everything again. It was all picking, and it would start with an upstroke and do it all again. So he would be sitting there for 12 hours a day. This is like, you know, insane dedication to that stuff. So people talk so much shit. They're like, oh, that's impossible to do. Oh, you need talent. Yeah, okay. Just sit down and practice and see where it takes you, right? Because I think people sell themselves so short all the time, because I don't know, maybe it feels better that, you know, oh, it doesn't matter if I actually put in the work, I wouldn't be as good as X anyway. And I think that's bullshit. And there's a reason why none of the big guitar hero guys said like, oh yeah, I practice an hour a day and then, you know, played Fortnite. No, they were obsessed. They practiced like 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day for years, right? So I think that's what it really takes as well. Just even look at the Baxty, you know, the guy from Chile. He said that in his opinion, to keep up his playing, just for upkeep, he needed to practice for 3 hours a day. And he said, if I really want to improve, I need to do at least 8 hours a day. And I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, at his level, that might be true, but I do believe that if you really want to improve your picking, if you can get in a consistent, at least an hour a day, you know, better if you do more. At GIT, they said like 2 hours a day, every day for 3 months, and then you get see a big bump in your picking technique. And that checks out for me as well. So another guy who had been practicing this what's it called? Technical difficulties thing. And he said he practiced that for, I think he said an hour a day for 150 days. That's, you know, And he said he wanted to give up so many times, but he just wanted to get that shit down, and it sounded great when he played it. And I'm sure that this not gonna exist in a vacuum. So if he wants to play, he can probably do that fairly easily as well, because he's developed the picking technique for that sequence. But it's just to put it into perspective, it takes way more time than people like to think, and it's before you start talking about, oh, this because this guy is so talented or whatever, put in that time for at least a year and see what happens. And if you don't improve, I'm 100% sure you just practice the wrong way. So that's why I'm so adamant about showing what I consider the right way to practice, if you want to get the most out of your technique practice and all that stuff. So, because it's so much snake oil bullshit online, where people promise like, oh yeah, you can learn to shred in 30 days and you only need to practice for 30 minutes. Like, no, that's fantasy land. Maybe you can learn, something like, do something like that, but that's not really, that's more like a, parlor trick than anything else, in a way, right? So if you want to build a technique that you can actually use, that will take way longer. But the thing is, if you practice correctly and you put in the time, it's not going to take you 6 months to see progress. You will see progress within a few days, and that should then give you more motivation to continue. And also, if you can reframe it to see like, well, the fact that it's hard to learn this stuff, that's why it's cool. Because it doesn't matter if you're, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, whoever, no one can practice for you. If they wanted to develop this kind of technique, for example, I don't know why they would, but let's say they wanted to, they have to put into work. There's no getting around that, so. Also, Panos, if I really don't think if you're stuck at a certain tempo, I don't think the solution is to just sit there and like try to grind at a tempo where it's not perfect. I see techniques like this, and you're like, what? So if this represents perfect synchronization, that's where you want to do your reps. And I don't know if you saw my video a couple of days ago. It's one of the new ones where I talk about, it's basically, I think it's called why guitarists never improve. And I talk about why practicing slow is so important, but also what I mean by practicing slow. So you need to practice at a tempo, and that's going to be different for everyone, that you can actually keep everything perfect, because you're training your brain here. It's not the fingers, you're training your brain to do the correct thing. And our brains are quite thick, at least mine, so it takes a lot of reps before you get it to a point where you don't need to think about it. But if this is perfect synchronization, if we talk about picking, when you start getting closer to your tempo where it starts to fall apart, you're going to be here instead. So you're basically training your brain to be a bit off. So that's why this whole use a metronome and push it up 2 BPMs every week, and then 10 months from now you will be practicing at 16th notes at 180 BPMs. That's not a great thing to do at all. So you need to work on it super slowly, and then you can do what I've done here now, where I just fuck around and try. You try to play a bit faster, but then that's informed by you sitting doing this. Actually do everything perfect, right? So that's the thing. Yeah, of course, all right, but that's the thing. It's anything that's worth anything in this world will take a long time and more work than you want to. But I don't know why we don't get that as guitar players. Well, I do know why, because there's so much bullshit online. So. Also, Panos, are you part of the practice room? Go sign up otherwise, because there's a lot of... Well, actually, you should do the routine that I have for free in there. This whole clean up your picking, lock in sync, blah, blah, blah. That's for free in the practice room. That's from Practice Room Pro, but I released that to the practice room as well, just so people can see what it's all about. So that will definitely help you. And don't get stuck in this sort of like, oh no, it's kind of this weightlifting mentality where you think about progressive overload, you need to go to failure. We're not lifting weights here, we're learning a skill. So this is instead of like going out to a golf course trying to improve your drive and just fling it around the course and then hope that, well, if I do enough of these, I will have a perfect Tiger Woods type drive. And people will be like, yeah, obviously that won't happen. Exactly. And the same thing on guitar. So if you do the basics, whenever you repeat anything, you make sure you do it perfectly and you use the transition time and all the stuff that I talk about. And if you do that, and then when you're done with that, you can, you know, work on speed bursts, and then you can use the metronome thing, but you do that in a day instead of like in a sessions. You maybe do a few reps at 60 BPMs, then go up to 70 BPMs, 80, 90, so you do bigger skips. So I'm not saying that working with a metronome doesn't work, but the way that people do it doesn't work. Otherwise, you wouldn't see this thing like, oh, I've been stuck at X BPMs for 5 months now. That's not normal. But it is normal because people do that to themselves. So, Nino, are there any basic rules you have regarding hand positioning when practicing shredding to avoid injury? I'm new to practicing technique and I'm trying to say it right. Well, yeah, one very important thing is that the wrist is never like this. Because if you sit like this, you're going to develop carpal tunnel because you're basically pinching your nerves here. I have never had any problems with my hands, touch wood. But it's also mostly because of the way that I practice. So now when I sit around here, I'm just exploring this, you know, this tonality and just trying things for fun. But when I practice technique, I do that very slowly, like still. So I've never, you know, I practice up to 12 hours a day at points in my life. I've never had any problems with my hands because, and I think the reason for that is because I haven't sat there like just playing at top speed for hours. So that's one thing. Make sure that your hands should be as natural as possible. And another thing is that you should never push through any type of pain or any type of like, oh, this feels weird and tingly. Then you need to stop and, you know, well, take it seriously. Because even if like, oh, yeah, but I had an hour left of my practice routine, doesn't matter. That hour doesn't mean shit in the long term if it turns out that you keep pushing it and then you can't play for 6 months. So back off instead and then try it again the next day. And if not, you know, take an even longer time off. Just don't just push through shit because that will bite you in the behind. So Nino, are you part of the practice room? You should definitely sign up, otherwise it's free. And there's a lot of, you know, you can ask me questions as well, and there's a really cool community. I used the Vi thing, basically. So I would do, you know, if you really, yeah, it's behind me somewhere. I did 50 minutes on, and then 10 minutes off, and then 50 or 55, I don't remember, this was quite a few years ago, but 50 or 55 minutes, I had a break, and people were like, well, this is not really 1 hour. No, but if you know, whatever. So I would do that, and then I would do that for 3 hours, and then I would have a bit of a longer break, and then I would do that again, 4 times. So it took longer than 12 hours to go through. It was like constant. That was cool to do. I think I did the 12-hour thing for over a month, and it really improved my playing. But it's also kind of like, I practice really well, but I also think like there's definitely a point of diminishing returns. So if you practice for 4 hours, for example, and you get a shit ton out of that, but I'm not sure you will get the same amount out of the next 4 hours, if that makes sense. And you definitely won't get the same amount of progress out of the last 4 hours, right? So I do think it's going to be some slope of like, the longer you do it, the less you get out of it. So would probably been better for me to shoot for, 6 hours a day and do that for months and months and months instead of just doing, 12 hours a day for, which I actually did before and after that, but it was something about having that sort of crazy period of just practicing. I did that when I just started teaching, and didn't have any students, so I was, might as well practice. And then once I started getting some students, they recommend other people, and it kept going like that. So then I couldn't practice that much, but I'm happy that I did, because it's a good thing to do if you can do it. But also, I think a lot of people have done that and injured themselves, so don't do that. Hi Jordan, I just want to say thank you for all the awesome content and ask you how about we can improve navigation around the neck connecting scales. Thank you for saying that. Well, I've gone through the cage system. That's what they taught at GIT. I don't like it. I think it's very left-hand oriented or fretting hand oriented, because you stay in one position all the time. And for the right hand, it's very it's not ideal, right? Because if you learn a sequence in one cage position, the picking is so random, because you have like 2 notes here, 3, 3, 3, 2, and then 3, whatever however you do it. And take another position, like it's random, so I don't like it very much. So what I would suggest that you do instead is doing 3 note per string, and you can always get into this cage system after that. But what I like about the 3 note per string is that it's so logical, because you have 3 notes per string, and you have 7 different positions, because if you have a major scale, that is, and all the derivative scales. So I think it's so much more logical, and also you get this overlap. There's the camera here. You get this overlap where if I start here, I'm just gonna start here for so C, D, F, wow, okay, C, D, E, right, and then F, G, A, B, C, D, and so on. But if I go up to the next position, I will start on the D instead of go D, E, F. So the last 2 notes on each string in this position are the first 2 notes in the next position, and that's why it's overlaps like this. So it's only the only new note on each string is going to be the last note in each position, and that, I think that's helpful. But also you make sure to cover the entire neck, because the cage system has gaps in it, because there's only 5 positions. So I'm not a big fan of that. Saying that, there's great players that use it a lot. I think Martin Miller is a big fan of it, but I can't endorse something that I don't like myself. But I'm just saying what works for me. But I think anyone in this day and age should know, all the ways of doing it, because after a while it doesn't matter. If I play this, I'm not really thinking cage or 3 note per string or whatever. I just see the notes where they are, and that also comes from working on scales on one string at a time. So that's super important as well. Hope that helps, Camilo. So TLDR, I would work on 3 note per string position, but also do it, learn each scale on one string, because then you can select these cool English things. It's a bonus. Any more questions before I go? And actually, Camilo, again, you see on the screen here, clean up your picking, locking, string characters in all 7 scale shapes. If you join the practice room for free, you can get that, and then you have a 30-minute daily practice routine. That will help your picking a shit ton if you do it exactly as described, and also you will learn all the 7 scale shapes for the major scale, which also means that you know all the related modes as well, because the scale shapes are the same. And I also highly suggest that you learn one key first. You know, learn the key of C major. You really know that one. And this is, you know, not only me who says this. Frank Gambale talked about learn one key really well, and then you learn another key really well. And once you've done that for like 5-6 keys, you're gonna see how everything connects in all the keys. Because guitar is a bit different than piano and, you know, wind instruments, in the sense that if I play this and I do this, exactly the same fingering, whereas on piano that would be a completely different fingering. That's why if you want to really annoy your keyboard player, just write riffs like this, where you play one shape. That will drive them insane, because for them it's going to be like you're going to have to completely different the chord. For us it's just moving around. I don't really have a favorite key, but I think for guitar, I remember someone said, oh, why is all your licks in like A and C and E, and why not E flat? It's like, hey dummy, E flat is like the lowest. This is the lowest E flat available on a standard tuned guitar, right? So it's not a idiomatic key. Idiomatic means that when something is sitting well on that instrument. So guitar, the best keys for guitar will always be the ones that have the open string. You don't need to play the open strings, but if you have the open strings in the key, that's going to be a really good key for the guitar in terms of that stuff. But I don't have any, you know, E flat is great as well, but it's not the best key for guitar, I would say, just because for that reason. And before I say, oh, well, Yngwie plays an E flat, no, he doesn't. He plays an E, but he tunes the guitar down a half step, so it's the same idea. But if you want to write everything in E flat, go right ahead. So yeah, all right, I'm done for today. But in case you're watching this and you haven't signed up for the practice room, do that now. It's free and it's awesome. So see you in there. Bye.